Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am so excited. We have with us my friend and also colleague, Suzy Ashworth. She is the author of the best-selling book, Infinite Receiving, also the podcast, Infinite Receiving. And she is a superstar in so many ways. Her business continues to boom, evolve, and go to the next level. And we met in a mastermind some years ago now. And this is the time when she was starting to create that book and that podcast. And I remember her sending the graphics into the chat space. And it's just so beautiful to see what's on the other side of that now that they've both been brought to fruition. And it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you here today, Suzy. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to see you.
Yeah. And so last week's episode was about the money game with Genevieve, who was also in that mastermind. And I felt what a beautiful continuation in the field of abundance than to go into receiving, and not only receiving, but infinite receiving. And on last week's episode, I asked her if she thought money was masculine or feminine. And so I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so for me, money is neutral. So it's not so much masculine or feminine. You know, I think that in order to allow money into our spaces, we have to be open to receiving, and receiving energy is often leaned back. It's about increasing our capacity. It's about opening ourselves up so we are in our most expansive space. So that part of allowing money into your world, that is when we are in our feminine. But I'm sure that you have many entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, who are in your space, and often, not always, and it's not a prerequisite for everybody 100% of the time, but often there is some action that is required. There is an aim. And when we are in action and there is an aim, we are in our masculine. That is us as the vessel, as opposed to money itself, which I believe is neutral.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I agree. I feel that it's definitely both, in the sense, like, when we're in that space of receiving it, I feel we do enter into the feminine. And as we're receiving it, the money's masculine, right? Like, we're being penetrated by that money. And then similarly, to create those avenues of cash flow, we do step into our masculine. And I do think we can make it, right? Like, we can make the money happen, and we can also, and maybe that's more of like the expected ways, whereas like the unexpected ways that it comes more in like those feminine ways that are surprising too. And I think that's how so many female entrepreneurs, you know, there's like the era of the boss babes where we've made the wild money. And of course it's still happening, but there's just been this like incredible amounts of money made in the coaching and healing industry that has been so beautiful and really like has blown so many of our minds. Like, I even know within our communities that someone recently had like a $2.2 million day, and it was like, wow. Like, wow, like this is how we get to play with it. And there really is no limit to it. And that's why
I think using infinite receiving is such a beautiful word, because obviously words are frequencies. And the moment you hear that, I just automatically expand and go,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. Like you go out of your mind, like out of the limits of the mind, like infinite receiving, you know?
Yeah. 100%. That's how I knew that I was onto something, because whenever I would mention the name, people would go, tell me more. Like, what do you mean? It's an immediate activator for many people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in your 400 episodes of Infinite Receiving podcasting days that you did and have, and I'm curious, like, what do you feel were the most activating conversations? Or because I'm sure it expanded you to then continue to expound upon this topic for as long as you did with the book and everything. And if you had to say, like, could say the top three activating concepts connected to infinite receiving, what would you say they are?
How to know you're ready for quantum leap, or the energetics of quantum leaping. How to change things fast, and what it means to be an infinite receiver. Those three things people want to know. Yeah.
Tell me more. Tell me more. Yeah, and yeah, let's go into that. Like,
Yeah.
like yummy, delicious.
So
um
just from a perspective of what is an infinite receiver, or what is infinite receiving, first off, for me, it's a philosophy for living. And it is a way of moving through the world in such a way that you are a magnet for your conscious desires to come to you, with a level of ease and grace that to the outside world looks and feels like magic. And at the same time, I often say you cannot good your way into heaven. And I think that in the personal development world and in the spiritual world, there's this idea that if I do enough ritual, if I, write out my desires 500 times, I'm never going to have any challenge. There's never going to be any contrast. Like, if I can just be good enough, then everything will be perfect. And the flip side of that, and what I feel is really important, is understanding that we are human beings, we're spiritual beings living a human experience. And so that human experience is full of contrast. It is full of polarity. And we have to have that, because that is the way that our lessons are delivered to us. And so when we are in that infinite receiving mentality, as well as frequency, we are able to extract the gifts from the chaos and from the challenge in a way that people who are not operating at that level are. And that means that our learning, our wisdom, our consciousness, we're constantly expanding, we're constantly receiving, even in the challenge, even when we are having to be more resilient than we have ever been before, because it feels like we're in the middle of a whole hurricane, we're still able to extract the gifts. And actually, I've really seen that and experienced the duality and the polarity of that this year, more so. I've been in business for 11 years, and this 11th year, I would say, has been most challenging. And what it's required of me is, one, to really embody the principles of the book, because there are times where I'm like, God, am I even supposed to be the messenger for this message? And it's like, it's because you're going through this, and it's because you're willing to keep going back to the book, back to the principles, and asking yourself, how can I apply this more deeply? Oh, okay, there's that truth. There's that truth. Often I pick it up and read it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really good stuff. It's like, you wrote this. There's truth in this. And that has really supported me through the polarity and the duality that I have experienced.
Yeah. And I often say that the mission is the medicine.
Mm.
So often, we come to live the experiences and jump through the hoops and go through the healings of the very message that we're here to deliver.
Yeah.
We had to go through it, or else it's not wisdom, because
Yeah.
wisdom is experience.
Exactly.
And similarly, I know before we hopped on the call, I was telling you about like all the craziness that I've had to go through similarly myself. And I'm like, Suzy, I know I'm a 10 billionaire. It's like, why isn't it here yet? That's not the question though, right? It's like, I know there's the initiations to get there. And I also think that there's this other layer to it. Because sometimes people are like, I don't get it. But that person is not even spiritual.
Yeah.
They're not even a good person and they have billions of dollars. So I think that's the thing, is like when we decide to take the red pill and we stepped in out of the matrix and we are on this personal development, spiritually evolved path, we're bringing in conscious money. We're here for the creation of a new paradigm of earth, and that includes a new paradigm of money. So I do feel that we have to go through and clear all the karmas connected to it, not only from this life, but past lives. We have all the ancestral and generational work to do. And then on top of that, whatever human lessons and experiences we're here to learn. And I feel that money is a part of this game, this lesson, all of it that we're going through. So I do think that once we cross, and I've actually known clients and people close to me as well, the moment, like the money game was fine before the spiritual awakening. And then it kind of had to be brought in as part of that, and all the ways we have to separate our worthiness and our deservingness and our validation and from money, because there's been so much distortions of that energy in the mass media reality of it. And so I do think because we're on a spiritual path, even more that we'll find ourselves in these obstacles or challenges around it, because we're rewriting the story connected to it.
I think from my perspective, there's two things in here. In the book, I talk about the worth triangle and everything that you just said about the disconnecting between self-worth, your external worth, external value, and then your leverageable worth, your leverageable money. It's just so important, There are incredible human beings in this world who are impacting people exponentially, and their bank balance isn't a representative of the external value that they're putting into the world. Sometimes that's through choice, and other times that is subconscious blocking. You have incredible human beings who are earning so much money. We see this in the celebrity world all of the time, but their self-worth is absolutely through the floor because they're getting their external validation from fans, from hangers-on, but they don't know who they are. And so much of the book is about, these are the tools, these are the exercises for you to really lean into your own value, knowing your intrinsic worth, and understanding that is completely separate from the money work that you have to do to increase your leverageable worth, and also understanding that your external value, because often I think in the personal development world, we say the more impact, the more income. Actually, those two things are also separate, And so there is absolutely work to do to disconnect the entanglements that we make. And I absolutely think that it is possible to work on all three areas of the triangle at the same time, but there is another level of consciousness and intention that is required to see that through. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing for me is that, and I was thinking about this morning, there's such a fire in my belly at the moment, and a realization that the way that I have been living my life up until this awareness is that I never used to want to entertain a plan B, because plan B felt like I wasn't really owning my desire. Now, when you are running a multiple seven-figure business, when you have a team, actually it's really important to have plan Bs. Like, it's important for you to understand that things contextually might change and not everything is going to fall out the way that you desire it to fall out. And so having a plan B that's still leading you in the same place is really, really important. And what I found is that I didn't have a plan B because spiritually I felt like that was me saying, I don't quite believe in myself. Like, I'm not allowed to have any other options. And at the same time was not completely acting in alignment with my vision. And so there was this just awareness today that I'm burning the bridges from, like, I used to say things like, if it doesn't work out, then I'll go and work in Tesco's. Tesco's, for your international listeners, is like Walmart or, Kmart. It's like, if it doesn't work out, I'll go and work in That we're never going to work in Tesco's. Okay, this is my purpose. My purpose is to help activate other human beings into living their purpose. I do that through various different ways. That is what we're doing. And there may be a plan B. If this plan over here doesn't work, that strategy doesn't work, then I'm going to have another strategy. But we're still always going to be activating people into living their purpose. And that decision today then created the space for me to really own that the vision is that I'm doing that on a scale that is impacting millions and millions of people. And as I spoke that truth, I noticed there was a little contraction in my body. Who am I to say that? You do not have the evidence that you're ever going to be able to fulfill that. Like, that's a big claim. And again, what I teach in the book, what I teach my clients is actually the fulfillment of the goal is irrelevant. And this is something actually that we had conversations around this in the mastermind. It is who I am becoming on the way to the goal that is going to determine the quality of my life, is going to determine the quality of my relationships, will determine the quality of my income, because it will determine the quality of my actions. And so we set these huge goals because they become our North Star. This is the way that we need to move in order to be moving close to the goal, in the direction of the goal. But everything that happens on the way is going to be absolutely extraordinary, whether I hit it or not. And that was very exciting.
Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying about the impact you're making doesn't necessarily correlate with what's in the bank, because I remember when I was on the Fox reality show, reaching millions of people on a daily basis, because it was one of those that was filmed 24/7, there was so little in my bank account because of whatever reasons. Like, I was getting paid, I think, like $1,000 a week from them. And like, it was just like not a lot of money relative to what I can make. So that was definitely not true. And then also other times where I've had one client for $100,000. It's one person. Do you see? So it's like, I have the proof that that's not even true, because in my own reality, it's been that way. And even still, I'm similar to you. There's been times, on the entrepreneurial journey where I've had the 6-figure months, and then where I've had negative in my account, but it never changed what I was going to do. Like, I've had where like my parents were like, well, maybe you need to get a job now. And I'm like, I have one. And it's hard for people to even understand, because I'm a medical doctor. They're like, you're a medical doctor. Why are you letting yourself struggle financially? And for me, I think it's part of the initiation. Because even though, yes, the earning potential is so high for this work, because we can charge whatever we feel is the aligned price, it's not about the money, actually. And charging the aligned price is because, at least for me, as an as an energy healer on top of the activations and the coaching, because, I really kind of do all of it. It has to do with protection. It has to do with the level of transformation that is really priced. So sometimes it's a karmic thing, so that you don't take on the karma of your patient or your client. You charge. Like, there has to be that permission. The charging is also the permission. So money in the field of a service-based industry is quite fascinating, because there's not this like physical. I have a singing bowl here. Like, it's not like this physical thing you're buying that it's like, okay, well, we can evaluate what all of this costs, right? It's a lot of times it's energetic. Sometimes you are just like pulling numbers out of the ethers, but it's coming from a place that's informed energetically. And I feel like that's why, because money is energy, we really do have this infinite capacity to receive it. Like, it is made up. Like, there's really infinite amount of money. And I think I'm just still fascinated as to how I can muscle test and know what my net worth for my life is, and then not yet be there, even though the conviction, the knowing, all of that's there. To me, that's what's so fascinating. Like, I know it. I know the destiny, and it's like, clearly there's still lessons to learn. Clearly I'm not the embodiment of her yet. And
So
I think
I would
that's
say, on my wrist, I have F plus A equals M, and that represents faith plus action equals miracles. And for me, when you muscle test, what I hear is you have the faith, you have the belief. That is what the faith stands for. It's belief in self, it's belief in the universe, it's belief in the mission, it's belief in the vision. And then it's plus the aligned action. And so you get to ask yourself, am I acting in alignment with the vision that I have for the person who owns that £10 million or $10 million house that is just across the way? Am I showing up and doing the work, creating the offers or creating the pathways for me to create and allow the type of miracles that are in alignment with $10 billion Dr. Nikki? And if you're not, then the question is why? That's where the tools come in. That's where what is the block here? And I think that often people will try and look at the whole thing. And for me, what is so helpful is what is the next step? The next step that I am taking, is it taking me one step towards it or one step away? If it's taking me one step towards it, then we should do it. And then if I'm not doing it, why am I not doing it? Where does it not feel safe to take this next step? Where is the fear? Where is the scarcity? Where is the lack? And this is where we clear, we shed, we do the process, we use the tools in order to clear the way for that next step, and then we do the next one.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating, and also I think that when you shared with me that you were no longer at this time actively doing live episodes of the podcast, there was this part of me that was like, why not? And then when you told me what your goal was, which is you're focused mainly on your what did you call it? Your
my coaching
program?
certification. Yeah.
Then I was like, fascinating. Because for me, I think, I am having this moment of, how do I even say this? Almost like a refinement in like, what is the why behind everything I do? Is it because I want to reach millions of people or make millions of dollars or billions of dollars? Or it's really none of that. It is for the fulfillment of the mission. So that's why it's funny that you said it's actually about the fulfillment of the mission. It's who you are on your journey to fulfill it and who you become. That was one of the primary things of that mastermind you were in. And yeah, it is interesting, because when I look back and think, okay, if money's right, or if you're wanting to grow something, you do take the actions connected to do that. And when I think of who I am, it's really like, I'm not even coaching. I'm writing, I'm speaking, it's books. It has really nothing to do in that like day-to-day And so it's funny, and so it is interesting because this week we did send some my media kit and a book proposal to a bunch of different agents. So there is something obviously still moving me in the direction. In a right now moment, obviously the podcast, I don't make money from it. I just find that, is this a way to reach millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind? Yes. So I do it. I feel like so much of my work sometimes is like charity, even like how my frequency of posting on social media, it feels like, oh no, I have to do this. This is a platform to reach millions of people. But then it's like, am I really generating what it is I desire from that? So yeah, it's fascinating to get even more clear and specific about what are the actions that are aligned, or the best ones to do right now. Because it's true that we can't do everything all at the same time. So there is the season for the podcast. There is the season for coaching or group programs, or, et cetera. So yeah, I feel like that is a good way to look at it, to also become more intentional to produce the results that you're actually desiring.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got to act.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like, I gotta sit down with myself. Gotta get clear again, because what I do notice is it does become like a habit thing. And I notice, I think this is actually a good thing to say for listeners too, that I feel that I had the awareness of, is there's that line of like, how do you know you've done it for long enough, and that it's time to change, not because it doesn't work, but it's not quite the right formula for the results that you desire. And yeah, I don't know if you feel that in your experience you had an answer for that. I generally go by like intuitive guidance, like, inspired, do I feel the energy? Is it waking me up? Is it giving me the energy to want to put more effort into that? Is generally, and when there's no, then I'm like, then that's not the thing. But then there's things I've wanted to do, and I felt the fire, and then the signups are like not as high. So that's always been interesting too.
I agree. Like, how I feel is more important than what brand marketers tell you. And it's not that, and I mean like how I feel within my body. It's like, I feel like I have a good balance between understanding that when I post on a daily basis, people come back to my platform on a daily basis because they're learning, because they're getting inspiration, because they're getting some of the Suzy frequency. And when I am consistent with that over time, when I then have an offer, those are my warmest people. Like, I understand that. And so if I choose not to post because I don't feel like it for a couple of months, that is going to have an impact. It also puts more pressure when I do post, because when I post, if I've not posted for a couple of months, it needs to be a knockout, for the algorithm to show it to as many people. So it's not, when I say how I feel, it's not, I'm not so wishy-washy, but I'm noticing, like, when does it feel a slog? And the question I ask myself is, why am I doing this? What is the outcome that I desire? And if I'm not going to do this, but I want that outcome, what am I going to do instead? So I ask myself those questions. But what's interesting right now where I am is I'm looking at the shoulds. I should have a podcast. I should be, I've decided that I'm not actually going to speak at anybody's events in 2025. And as somebody who runs events, and I understand that I want people to come to my live events, the best thing to do is go to live events. That feels like a should. And I am wanting to innovate. I'm wanting to disrupt. I'm wanting to do things differently for my own self, but also for the industry. Like, I want to prove to my clients that we get to do it by being the most full of ourselves that we can be. And that isn't following what everybody else is doing all of the time. And in fact, the people that I like mentor with from afar, They're like, if everybody is doing it, and the example that this guy Dan Kennedy used, like everybody is on their mobile phone all of the time, scrolling, 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 scrolling. This is why I do not have a mobile phone. And it really struck me that when everybody's doing a thing, that is probably a really great indication that you could at least be doing something differently. And in his book, you should be doing it differently. And so I'm challenging myself to see where I can be more creative, more innovative, and create pathways that are uniquely mine.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just having a thought. Like, I'm so happy that I brought you on here because I feel like, I've had a lot of different podcast guests, and this is the first one I felt like, wow, this one was for me.
Yay!
I'm like, this is for everyone else. And I'm like, this is for me, this one. So I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And so I feel like in terms of infinite receiving, let's kind of bring it back to that. It's been fascinating. Like, I think you and I both, we like manifested like wild things in our lifetime, like, I think for me, it's always been around the houses. There's something around, like, I can just manifest like seafront, beachfront homes, like on repeat, and it's interesting how, and this is how we know that, like, infinite receiving can be for anything, right? It can be infinite receiving for love, infinite receiving for seafront houses, infinite receiving for money. And we can be really good at some things, and like other things can challenge us. And I feel like it just essentially shows us where there could be healing, where, like you said,
Absolutely.
the blocks and different things to work on and clear. And so for our listeners, etc., I'm assuming in your book you have this, like, and I feel like this is what we'll go through in the bonus as well, is to be clear on like where are the avenues because I feel like we're already capable of this as humans, and we do it for some things already. Like, we infinitely receive certain things already, and other things where we might have some stickiness, and that's just showing us where we can still step into our greatness, where we can still heal, evolve, do some personal development. And I wonder if there's any last bits on infinite receiving that you'd like to leave us with, whereas I feel in the bonus can be a how-to infinite receiving, So something that doesn't give the bonus away, but anything else you'd like to share as a last gem for our listeners?
I feel like a really powerful question that you can ask yourself is, how is it serving me to stay where I am? How does staying where I am keep me safe? There's a reason that you are not making the moves. And even if you are uncomfortable, the familiarity of your discomfort is the thing that will keep you looping in situations, experiences, environments, and relationships that you know are not serving your highest self. And so that recognition and acknowledgement of how is this serving me can be a really beautiful wake up call. Because once you have brought the unconscious into the conscious, you can't unsee it. It then makes it that much more challenging for you to continue making the same non-serving decisions. So how is it serving me? How is it keeping me safe? It's a variation of the same question. Really, really powerful one for bringing the unconscious into the conscious realms.
Beautiful. And so, Suzy, where can people find you?
Yeah, mainly I am hanging out on Instagram. So come and play with me over there. It is Suzy, SUZY _Ashworth. And I am there pretty much every day. So come and say hi.
Beautiful. And we'll also include the links for her book and her podcast and website as well. So you can see those in the comment section. And to continue the conversation, join us inside the bonus section. Thank you, Suzy, so much for being here. This was such a pleasure. And thank you all for being here as well. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.